As you devoted listeners already know, meal prepping in the Edmondson Ames household is pure chaos, pure unfiltered chaos. But we still want to feed ourselves and our kids something protein-rich and actually good, not just whatever survived the fridge cleanout. That's why we love Omaha Steaks. Tender steaks, flavorful burgers, seafood, chicken, and sides delivered right to our door. Rushed weeknight, Saturday cookout, quality proteins already on hand. I also really love the idea of having something that's actually worth pulling out of the freezer. Knowing it's been carefully aged and individually packaged makes it feel a whole lot different than the mystery meat that's been hiding in the back of mine for 6 to 8 months. Omaha Steaks has earned its reputation over 100 years. This is the same beef trusted in kitchens across the country, shipped straight to yours. Steakhouse quality without the steakhouse prices. Your family will genuinely think dinner took hours instead of minutes. And yes, frozen delivery can actually be this good. Their meticulous aging process and vacuum-sealed individual packaging means everything arrives ready for grilling, searing, or roasting with almost no effort. No last-minute store runs, no scrambling, just quality that generations of perfecting actually shows. Try the Burger Perfection Flight at omahasteaks.com today. That's 20 premium steak burgers for just $79. That's 20 premium steak burgers for just $79.99. Plus, get $35 off with promo code CULTY. That's omahasteaks.com, promo code CULTY for $35 off at checkout. Terms apply. See site for details. Go to omahasteaks.com and use promo code CULTY at checkout for $35 off. Minimum purchase may apply.
This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Do you ever think about switching insurance companies to see if you could save some cash? Progressive makes it easy to see if you could save when you bundle your home and auto policies. Try it at Progressive.com.
Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Potential savings will vary. Not available in all states.
This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be considered legal, medical, or mental health advice. The views and opinions expressed do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of the podcast and are not intended to malign any religion, group, club, organization, business, individual, anyone, or anything.
I'm Sarah Edmondson.
And I'm Anthony Nippy Ames, and this is A Little Bit Culty.
We woke up from a cult, and that journey was captured in The Vow on HBO and in my memoir, Scarred.
Now, in this podcast, we break down the shame and secrets that make these experiences so destructive with honest conversations on how seemingly benign groups can cross into the cultiverse and how to spot and recover from trouble if it happens to you.
Each week, we bring in experts, survivors, and whistleblowers to explore red flags, resilience, and even share a few laughs, because sometimes you gotta laugh.
Subscribe to our Patreon for early and ad-free listening, some live Q&A, and exclusive content at patreon.com/alittleBitCulty.
Welcome to Season 8 of A Little Bit Culty. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to A Little Bit Culty. Thank you for joining us here on YouTube. Today, we are in studio in Vancouver with our new friend and colleague, Alicia Duncan. Welcome to the studio.
Thank you for having me.
We are so excited to have you here. We've been talking about this for a while. And as you know, and as our audience will soon figure out, this is not a story about a traditional cult. This is a great way for A Little Bit Culty to expand its lane. We're talking about coercion, your mother's medically assisted death through the MAID program was the first police-investigated MAID death. Is that accurate?
Absolutely.
And so we're here with the lens of what does this system look like in regards to coercion, and when can you not...
Same pattern recognition that we see in all these courses.
When can you not challenge institutions, and where is the lane? So this might seem like a little bit of a shock to people, and just off the top, we want to say none of us here are against MAID, right? We are talking about your experience.
Idea of it,
the idea of
what
MAID.
it pretends to address or can address.
I always say I am not conscientiously opposed to assisted dying in the context of end of life.
Right.
Yes.
So just to bury the lead a little bit and get people to understand why you're here today, what was it that happened in your experience? We're gonna let you share your whole story in part one, and then your advocacy and what you've uncovered in part two. What is it about what you saw in your journey that made you reach out to us, and why are you on a cult podcast in regards to your mother's passing. And by the way, I am so sorry for everything that you've been through. It has been obviously a traumatic and very heavy ride.
Thank you. It wasn't actually until a few years after my mom's passing, I was actually watching The Vow. So shout out to you guys, where I really started seeing what happened to our family and the trauma that we experienced as something entirely different than what we had thought. And we'll talk about these themes of gaslighting and narrative control and so on and so forth. And that's when I originally reached out to you guys, because I think this is a really important topic that we discuss. There isn't a lot of conversation on what happens to families in the aftermath.
So was it like kind of a pattern recognition for you to say, like, I experienced this in your pursuit of the truth, or just casually going, wait, that didn't feel right, that didn't feel right? Because your book seemed to highlight a lot of things that felt like, that's a red flag, that's a red flag.
Yeah, I think initially in the beginning, I mean, my sister and I were both diagnosed with PTSD after our mom ended her life through Canada's Medical Assistance in Dying program. And we were just winging it. I don't really know how else to put it. I mean, in the book, I discuss that, it was the Wild West, and in many ways it still is. Yeah. And so, like you just mentioned, it was a lot of like, this doesn't feel right. Something is very wrong, but we didn't have the language to put to it. And so it's through, it's been almost 5 years since my mom passed, the 4 years of this advocacy work, really just diving deeper and looking at what exactly did happen so we can help support other families that are going through the same thing.
Good for you.
Mm-hmm. Thanks.
In terms of your mother's journey, and kudos to you for writing a book. We know that's not easy, especially to go back through all of these moments and try to understand what happened to your mom.
Which you did well.
You did really well.
Thank you. And you two are two of the people, other than the amazing people who did endorsements on the back of the book, but two people that have actually read the book. It's not quite out yet, so I'm...
That's right.
What's the air date?
Canadian launch is August 18th.
Well, we will make sure, we'll try to get this out around that time to help with that.
Amazing.
Because we want authors to thrive, and especially after all you've endured, make sure this message gets out there. And I'm sure that a lot of people will want to pick it up and talk about it. This is, like we said at the beginning, the Venn diagram of your story and our story with the coercion and some of the, abuses of power and safeguarding but we'll get into all that.
Are you getting pushback at all?
My sister and I have always experienced a little bit of pushback. Yeah. So much of this conversation around assisted dying is framed around autonomy. And so, anytime we speak out on social media or parliamentary testimony, whatever it may be, people really challenge that, this was my mom's autonomy. How dare I stand in the way of this autonomous decision?
That's not what you're challenging. So people put words in your mouth and then shadow box with you.
Absolutely. I mean, it's gaslighting.
I was going to say, it sounds like gaslighting.
It's not. That's a feature of doing what we do.
Of course.
Right. I guess. Yeah. That's what I'm driving at. Yeah.
I have thick skin now. We'll put it that way.
Yeah. Most of the time, ditto. But let's go back to what are the key sort of emotional junctures of what happened to your mom that set her up for her eventual choice or I should say choice, because that's sort of part of this discovery for you, is how much of it was choice and how much of it was coercion and what other options were not given. Give us a bit of a timeline so the audience can understand.
I guess a way to frame it is, if there was no MAID program, how do you think it would have played out for your mom?
Well, exactly. I mean, at the end of the day, I can kind of jump back to where this really started or, kind of the main point. But my mom ultimately, at the end of the day, saw her assessors as her saviors because she was hopeless. She was suicidal. And these assessors recognized that. And ultimately, she's dead because of it. My mom was strongly opposed to suicide. She was a psychiatric nurse. She had spent her entire career caring for people who had mental illness and are having mental health challenges. And I know for a fact that this is something that she just, with all of the support and systems that there are and family supports, my mom strongly did not believe in this. So I recognize this as the person who made this decision was not my mom because of external pressures and undue influence.
So that's hard to prove too, I imagine. Yeah. Now you say assessors. It sounds
technical.
it sounds
a little bit. Yeah. Sounds technical.
But before they came in, though, like, where does do you want to tell us about the concussion and or what's important to know about her life that led to all the factors that put her in that position?
Yeah. So in February 2020, my mom was in a minor car accident. And at the time, she was diagnosed with a minor concussion. And of course, we know 3 weeks later, the world went into COVID lockdown. And so the treatment that my mom was receiving was very affected because of this COVID lockdown. You can imagine. So people were no longer going into doctors' offices. Treatment was being done over the phone. And she got a little bit better throughout the summer months as she was able to see family a little bit more. Our family is very close. She was very close with with her grandkids, my children, my daughter particularly. And so she was losing some weight, and it wasn't too much of a concern in the beginning. And so the doctors were doing everything. They didn't think that it was associated with the concussion. So they were ruling out everything from cancer and fibromyalgia and parasites. And of course, I mean, for the US listeners, we have a social medical system here in Canada. And so you go on a wait list to see one specialist, and sometimes that can take 3 or 4 months. And then that gets ruled out, and then you get put on a wait list for another specialist. And so these things take a really long time. And long story short, over the next 20 months, my mom was so severely underweight that 2 assessors, which can be a doctor or a nurse practitioner, found my mom's frailty as evidence that her death was reasonably foreseeable, and they ended her life.
Okay. So let's recap here. I don't know how you feel about that, but it seems to me, and I don't know if you know this or not, but she gets hit, goes to a doctor, she's okay in a couple months, and then this isn't even a story, but because there wasn't a system in place to help her with the concussion and everything else, it then created a need for someone to come in and assess her, which then led to this. Is that fair?
Yeah, and I think it's a bit more complicated than that as well, because I think that she was provided the best care that Canadian doctors were able to provide. So I don't think that her doctor did anything wrong. Okay. He did what he was able to do within the system that he has to work within.
Okay, that's a good distinction.
And wasn't it also that your doctor didn't think she should do the MAID program?
Correct. So
so then there's no real failure per se, except just time in the Canadian healthcare system, from at least.
I think so. And a little bit, from what I understand now is that there is no really fantastic clinics here in Canada for people with traumatic brain injuries. There's fantastic clinics down in the US, particularly in Texas. And of course, hindsight is 2020.
Right. You can't do that game.
You can't do that game. But, my mom had the financial means to travel to the United States to have treatment. And had we known, if we were able to have a snapshot in 20 months, this is what's going to happen, we obviously would have gone down and done this treatment. Okay. But of course, you're going through the system. You think that you're doing everything right. And unfortunately, it ended the way that it did because it took so long that my mom had just lost all hope that she was ever going to get better. I mean, she said to me before her death that she did not want to die. She just couldn't live like this anymore. So, I mean, it's devastating.
Yeah, that's hard.
And it's not just our family as well. Dozens of families have reached out to me personally, and I know of hundreds of other cases where this is happening, which is why I wanted to write a book about our experience. And so other families who have been affected this way by this system have some hope, maybe.
Yeah.
What is it that you're hoping to achieve with the book that you think that people don't know?
Similarly to your book, actually, I want my book to be a lens for people to be able to look at the systems that we defer to and that we trust, because on paper, you can read the legislation, you can read this, and it seems great. But when you start picking apart the language and the nuances within that, and you start seeing how this is playing out in real life, I mean, it's having horrific consequences.
Right.
I think about, there's so many things in life that we think like, oh, this is fantastic, and we've tried it out. Like communism, for example. If you read the definition of communism and you don't know what you're reading, that sounds amazing. Yeah. I want to live there. And, we see how that happens. And so I really just want to shine a light on what is happening, because if we're going to do this, we need to do this well. And lives are being lost in this, and people that are speaking out are being shut down. YouTube channels are being shut down. We're being gaslit. We're being told that these are rare circumstances. And I'm here to say that it's not rare.
One thing I don't know if we clarified is you were not part of the final days. And then you, as executor, tried to get the information about how the assessment was made for MAID. And then there was these walls of privacy, which I found, like, this is not a world I know anything about, and I'm sure you didn't know either. And so you've had to learn a lot. But can you explain a little bit for our audience as to why you couldn't get the information? Like, this is the part that makes no sense to me.
It made no sense. I couldn't believe it.
What Privacy Act, what is in place that prevents you as the executor to find out how the MAID was assessed? Why could you not get those records? That's the first question.
Okay.
And then how is that a problem? Like, it seems like there's a lot of protection for the people administering it and not enough protection for the people who are on the other end of it. Can you speak to that?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
The laws protect them, not you.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, the law itself is written to protect doctors. No doctor in Canada has ever been charged with criminal negligence for any medical procedure. So, like, let's just lay that down. You have to prove malicious intent, first of all.
That's why so doctors can't get sued in Canada. So for our American listeners or our listeners from around the world that aren't in Canada, Canadian doctors can't get sued because there's less legislation. Is that accurate?
Unless you're able to prove malicious intent. So
the doctor's trying to hurt you.
The doctor is absolutely trying. So if a doctor makes a mistake,
like leaves a sponge in your gut.
Exactly. They didn't mean to do it. There was no malice in that.
Right.
It was by accident, so the doctor cannot be charged. Okay, so there's a few things. So going back, my sister and I found out that my mom had applied for medical assistance in dying, and it was a text message from my mom's common law partner. And it was a link to A Dying with Dignity, which is an organization here in Canada that promotes euthanasia and the expansion of euthanasia. And they have made this document for family members whose loved one is considering this or is about to go through the process. And this was the first time my sister and I ever felt really gaslit. And in my words, we opened up this link and it was, doesn't really matter how you feel about this. Your loved one has made this decision. It's their autonomous decision, and basically shut up and get on board. And we thought, this is a cry for help. This scene was in the book when my sister and I received the message. I was away on holidays, and we just thought we have to have an intervention. First of all, she's not terminal. There's no way she would be approved. Any doctor is going to say, this is wild. Like, you need help. Because of COVID and because of restrictions, we hadn't been able to come to my mom's house regularly. And even when we were allowed in the final months, it was like on a Sunday, we were allowed to come visit and help with care and food prep. And it was really on my mom's terms and on her common law partner's terms. And so I flew home. And at this point, my mom had her second assessment, and my sister went over, and that's when my mom told us that she had been approved. So in Canada, you need to have 2 assessments done by a doctor or nurse practitioner, and then they can schedule your MAID provision, as they call it.
And they can schedule them without notifying just the common in-law was enough for them to
Yeah, because they consider this to be patient confidentiality. And the only reason my sister and I knew about it was because my mom told us.
And can we say his name?
Sure.
Rick?
Yeah.
Didn't think to include you and bring you in on the loop?
Rick was, I don't speak to him anymore. Rick was a very private person. I think that he still is. And he believed that because this is what my mom wanted.
He was protecting her.
That he was protecting her. I really do believe that. I mean, there's so many layers. I'm very angry at him. We haven't spoken really since my mom's death. But I also feel really sad for him in ways too, because I do believe that he was fully supporting my mom and what she wanted. The problem being is that what my mom wanted was detrimental to what she needed. And I don't always think giving someone what they want is helpful, right?
Adding the context for me after reading the book that he's kind of private actually helps me understand him a little bit more. Because from my perspective, I read it as what's this guy doing? Why isn't he more agreeable? At least. But if you add that aspect to it, it helps me understand them a little better.
Yeah. And I think that really played into their dynamic as well. I kind of talk about these themes a bit in the book. I mean, as many people were glued to the television and watching these counting death tolls during COVID, and he had high blood pressure, and my mom wasn't doing well. And so he was really protective of her. But in that, there was a lot of isolation. And so what he didn't know in that is that we would come to visit my mom. He was ensuring that she had her mask on, that she was staying far away. And then he would leave the room and she would slip the mask down and give us a kiss or a hug. Right. And so I mean, again, like going through the 3 years writing this book and interviewing everyone from, childhood friends and family members. And my dad, they hadn't been together in over 20 years, but they dated throughout their teenage years, and really getting a sense, like, I don't think my mom actually really knew who she was. She played a role for every person that she was with because she had a lot of religious trauma from her upbringing, and she was a good girl and just wanted to be loved. And I think in the end, it played into her demise because she just wasn't authentic and truthful to what she wanted or needed. So this is kind of, I digress, but jumping back.
It's given more context to how something like this can happen too. COVID, someone's afraid, they think they're protecting. It's a system that's not efficient. Like there's a lot of things, a lot of variables that are going on.
Absolutely. I mean, caregivers fatigue. Yeah. Rick was exhausted.
Yeah, I can imagine.
You could see it in his face, and the demands that my mom had. Like she was severely affected by her mental health at that point. I mean, she was wearing all of her clothes inside out. She was paranoid. She thought all of her food was poisoned. I would come over and bathe her, and it was like certain soaps, shampoos. She was always particular, but this was on a whole other level. Safety pinning her bed sheets. And
what does that do?
She didn't want to have any wrinkles on her bed because she said that it hurt her skin.
Oh.
So it pulls it taut, right?
Pardon me?
It pulls it tight?
Yeah, it pulls the sheets tight. So we were like safety pinning the sheet to the mattress so there was not a single wrinkle in the bed.
Okay.
Like
I actually kind of like that.
Honestly, I have OCD. Like I like a tight sheet too, so I get it. Balance, right? We're all about balance here.
Some of those I can get on board with.
Yeah, definitely. And and my mom was a quirky person. It was just I think there's a line in the book I talked about, like the sheer Donna-ness of it all, right? Like she was just a quirky, fun person.
Quick, shameless plug for our book because there's a very exciting update. The audiobook is officially out, and it's narrated by us. So you can now read the book however you like, hardcover, ebook, or listen to us tell you the whole damn story ourselves. And if you've been listening to the podcast thinking, I know this story, what else is there to learn? We think you might be surprised because the book does something different. It pulls everything we've learned together into one place, not just what happened, but the patterns underneath it, the red flags we missed, and what we understand now, and what we hope you can take from our experiences and actually use it in your own life. And if you're more of a just give me the goods person, we've got you there too. There are simple takeaways and checklists throughout, so you can skim, highlight, dog ear, or come back to the parts that matter most. It's the story, yes, but it's also the, okay, what do we do with everything we've learned book, and how do we use this information to protect us in the future? And now you can hear it in our actual voices, which feels like the perfect way to experience it. A Little Bit Culty, Navigating Cults, Control, and Coercion is available now in hardcover, ebook, and audiobook, wherever you get your books. And if you've already picked it up, first of all, thank you. Second, if you enjoyed it, please take a minute to leave us a review. Reviews make a huge difference in helping new readers find the book. And we do read them, all of them. Then pass that hard copy along. Give it to a friend. Leave it on someone's nightstand. Maybe give it to someone who might be in a cult. You never know. And save the audiobook for your next long drive, gardening marathon, dog walk, closet purge, or whatever activity makes you think, you know what could really improve this? A few hours of cult education. However you read it or listen or pass it along, we are so grateful you're part of this conversation. Enjoy! Thank you for listening. Now, let's dive back into the cultiverse. Just back to a couple points that I feel like I want to clarify for our audience who might be listening and try to understand like the coercive part, because you couldn't get the answers. When you watched The Vow, what clicked in for you about what you experienced that you found coercive? I don't want to put words in your mouth.
No, I think that the red flags. So, okay, let's jump back for 1 second, just because. So my sister and my mom tells us she's about to end her life and she has scheduled they call it a MAID provision. So she had scheduled her appointment to be euthanized 2 days later.
Wow.
And so my sister and I, it was crazy. And in Canada now, you can be euthanized within 24 hours.
After being assessed?
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah. So I would love to get,
That's
we'll get into the nuances.
Wait, hold on. Let me just get this straight. It takes 3 to 4 to 6 years, whatever, to get assessed or to get certain processes done here in Canada. And I know this from my own experience and watching certain family members go through things. But you can be euthanized within 24 hours if you want to be.
Yes.
Okay, that in and of
They've got that
itself
figured out.
is crazy.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Okay, so just
I know.
all right, hold on.
Like, let's just talk about that for a
Well, hold
second.
on a second. There's what we're kind of piecing together, all of us right now, which you probably can speak way more to. Like, that's off. Like, these are all these
That
inconsistencies.
just feels really off.
So what is it that you think is going on, or what can you prove? And what do you piece together? Because it seems to me that fact right there blows my mind. The fact that all this other things happen when it comes to taking your life, they can do it like that. That to me beckons more questions.
Okay.
Objectively. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
So we'll probably spend the next
Okay.
hour
All right,
answering
let's
that
do
one
it.
question.
Let's knock that
Yes.
out.
Great.
I think there's
Okay.
a lot of answers there.
Yes. So, I mean, the red flag started immediately. So from the moment that my sister and I found out, we called the police for a wellness check. So my sister works for the RCMP, which is the Royal Canadian
Right.
Mounted Police. And so she,
Thank God for that too.
honestly, my sister is a powerhouse. She just switched immediately into work mode. She knew these channels and
That's
avenues
all.
to go.
Thank God.
It was unreal. I mean, if you want to talk horoscopes, she's an Aries and I'm a Gemini. And so the two of us together were fire.
Yeah.
Yes. And I've read this book back. I had to piece so much of it from text messages and
Yeah.
emails because PTSD is a wild thing. And what your brain blocks out is, I mean, it's fascinating. But I can't wait for my sister to maybe one day read the book.
She hasn't read it yet.
She's not sure if she will.
Yeah.
But
So she used her connection with the RCMP to do what?
so she used her knowledge from how systems work immediately to jump into action. So we called the police for a wellness check. The police went to my mom's house because she had the paperwork in place. There was nothing that the police could do. However, they told us that their job is to enforce orders. And so we needed to get a court order from a judge. And then if there was an order or a warrant, I guess they call it a production order or a warrant for her arrest under the Mental Health Act, then my mom could be detained for psychiatric assessment. So first of all, a psychiatric assessment is not required in order to access medical assistance in dying. So we'll just lay that out there.
So
It
it's
is.
a totally gratuitous step.
So yes, it just has to be in the opinion of the assessor that this person is sound of mind to do this. And so
That's a subjective call, not
Yes.
a
Wait.
metrical.
What I just realized something. I don't know what the protocol for MAID is. When a nurse practitioner or a doctor is assessing someone to say if they're eligible, what are they checking for? They have to be of sound mind?
Okay. So, so I know it's such a convoluted topic. So in Canada, there's 2 tracks. So in 2016, when MAID was legalized in Canada, it was for people that had a reasonably foreseeable natural death. So coming. So
Yeah.
Provable, not objectively provable.
no, not provable at all. It is just in the opinion of the doctor. This is written into the legislation. There's no burden of proof for the doctor to prove a diagnosis. And there is no requirement for them to actually have a terminal condition, which I get into a little bit in the book. But because I guess they don't want to exclude maybe elderly people who are frail, who don't have a diagnosis, but their death is reasonably foreseeable. So you can understand these
Slippery.
very slippery and it's very ambiguous.
Ripe for abuse.
It's ripe for abuse. These laws are not designed to protect good doctors, right? Safeguards are meant to be put in place to safeguard patients from doctors that might exercise their right to use this. And this is exactly what is happening in Canada.
Wow.
So what happened 5 years later in Canada is that there was a charter challenge against the legislation and essentially saying that for people who weren't dying imminently, who maybe had a cognitive disability or, essentially they said it was discriminatory that they could not access MAID because they weren't dying fast enough. So think about ALS, these kind of scenarios. So
They tried to expand it to include people that needed it that weren't necessarily imminent foreseeable death.
That's
what
right.
you're saying? Okay.
that's right.
Who
So-
didn't want to live with a disease.
That's right.
Okay.
Why don't
And
they just say that?
there's no incurable. So it's confusing. So in Canada, And we can get into how democracy does not work around this because there's no votes on whether or not Canadians want this. What has happened in both scenarios when it was legalized and then again when it was expanded was there was challenges, like court challenges against the charter, and a judge ruled against our federal legislation. And the justice minister, his job is to basically shut down any judge that rules against it. But instead, in both scenarios, they have instead decided to expand the law. So what we have seen through the history of Canada and their assisted dying laws is that it's actually judges that are making these decisions, and there's no democracy at all. Canadians are not voting on this.
So if you know what judge to go to.
Essentially. And they are all put into place by whatever party is in power at the time. So if it's a liberal government, it's liberal judges, etc. I knew none of this. Like, you guys, I am an interior designer.
Yeah.
My sister and I, so I'll keep jumping back and keep asking questions as they come along. So my sister and I, we find out that my mom has applied. We go to the police. The police tell us that we need to go to a judge. So my sister and I, we worked through the night painting a picture with words about why my mom's mental health should be questioned. I had been going to her home on Sundays and helping with her care, but I had also been helping my mom record all of the medications that she had been taking because she's a nurse. She's a psychiatric nurse. She was documenting this all for a case against the insurance company for the car accident. And so she had been asking me to, because she couldn't look at screens, she kept asking me to help record all of this information. So I had a record of every medication that she had taken, the amount of time, the dose, the contraindications, everything that was going on. And with that evidence, I showed a pattern of my mom not following through with her doctor's recommended treatments and that her mental health should be questioned. And by the grace of God, this judge granted my sister and I a production order for my mom's arrest under the Mental Health Act.
Which saves her from
the first...
An assessor.
From the first scheduled MAID appointment. So we found out on a Sunday. We were at the courthouse on Monday morning.
Wait, saved her from the assessment or the actual appointment?
From the actual appointment.
Okay, so she'd already been assessed. She didn't get the appointment because you guys intervened?
So my mom had been assessed. She got the appointment.
Yeah.
We intervened.
Yes.
And the appointment was postponed.
While she was being assessed.
So psychiatric assessment could be completed. And so what happened is that my mom, who was suicidal and hopeless, attempted to take her own life. And it was then that triggered the system that my mom was now a danger to herself because she was willing to take her own life instead of waiting for a doctor to do it. And so my mom was actually sectioned into the psychiatric unit that she used to manage. And it's a wild thing to be relieved that your mom is now being held in a psychiatric unit, but you know that she is safe. Nippy, like you said, like from these assessors, right? Like we felt my mom was panicked.
Yeah,
she was
that's
worried.
the impression I get.
My mom was worried that she was going to lose capacity. And so she felt very rushed. And I think that this is like an area of coercion that we need to talk about where you feel these pressures, like undue influence from doctors, and nobody's talking about this. You know, doctors aren't allowed to put pressure on clients or on their patients, rather, to assess this program. But when you say to a patient, we believe that you're able to enact this. However, if you lose capacity, you won't be able to. And so we should schedule this appointment as soon as possible, especially now that your daughters are pushing back on this, right? Like, we don't know that the doctor said that, but you can see now,
right?
You can see now how this can happen.
So
I'm certainly there's an aspect of her going, well, my daughters aren't going to want this. If I want to do this, I better hurry.
I don't think my mom thought we were going to react the way, I mean, my mom didn't know that we were going to react.
Did she feel that you guys were at all adversarial at the point, or were you guys, I remember it was kind of you were a united front and having the talks behind.
Yeah, my sister and I, we were united in this right from the beginning. Because we were so close, I really just thought that I think my mom thought we would come around. You know, there was lots of text messages like, I hope you can please respect my decision. And, you know, it was a lot. We felt it was a lot of repetition from that link that we were sent about how to get your family members on board with this, you know. But I mean, Donna should have known her daughters better and that we weren't going to go down without a fight. So my mom was held involuntary for 48 hours in Canada. That's the length of time that someone can be held without another assessment. And of course, my mom being a psychiatric nurse and knowing exactly what to say, passed the assessment. And 4 hours later, my sister and I received a text message that my mom was dead and her body had been taken to a crematorium.
40 hours after she'd been assessed.
4 hours after
4 hours
after she was released from the psychiatric unit. So we'll go back to the beginning. So she tells us on Sunday she's been approved and she's going to die on Tuesday.
Yeah.
My sister and I go to the courthouse on Monday. We get the production order. And again, this is very a high level on this. The details are in the book, but we stop the initial assessment. My mom is hopeless, attempts to take her own life. That's when she's sectioned in the psychiatric unit. She's held for 48 hours. And then 4 hours after her release, they provided MAID. So they euthanized her. My now fiance and my sister's fiance both received text messages from Rick that my mom was dead.
He didn't even bother to tell you?
No. And so my partner and my sister's partner had to be the ones to tell us that our mom was dead.
And no goodbye. No,
nothing. And there's no words, there's no words for the trauma that you experience going through something like that. Like, it's just devastating. My mom and I, we were best friends. Like, we traveled the world together. She was so close to my daughter.
I don't know how you walk away from that feeling that the system didn't fail.
Well, that's what you picked up. The system did
based on
fail.
what you just said. Like, I don't know how anyone can hear that and dismiss that.
So, yeah, the system failed my mom. This is the system that she worked so hard for 40 years to protect people in crisis. And it failed her when she needed it most. And then the system went on to fail our family to get answers in the aftermath. And so again, so now I'll kind of continue on to one of your questions before, Sarah, where as an executor, I was able to get access to my mom's medical records, which you would think would include her assessment records. Like, how was she assessed to die under Canada's MAID regime? But they weren't included. And my mom's general practitioner, who did not want to assess her, who actually refused to assess her because he said in the medical records he did not believe she had followed through with any of his recommended treatment. He refused to assess her, but because the College of Physicians requires a doctor to refer, if you refuse to assess, you are required to refer to a physician who will. He was required to send my mom to the MAID Coordination Center, where she found a doctor and a nurse practitioner who would assess her. So we now have these medical records. I ordered an autopsy. I don't know why. I know it wouldn't change anything. But you're traumatized and you're grasping at straws and you don't really know what to do. And so, a few months later, my sister and I, we just, this red flag, this feeling like something went wrong. Like, the system failed my mom, something went wrong. And we started, my sister brought home the actual criminal code from work, like this huge binder. And we started comparing the criminal code to the legislation. And we could not figure out either under track 1 or track 2, because we don't have the assessment records. We don't know which track my mom was approved under. She wasn't dying, so surely she had to be approved under track 2. There was no diagnosis that we could see that had been confirmed. My mom was repeating, diagnoses she thought she had. And we decided to take that information to the police. We thought we would be shut down. You hear so many stories where police aren't willing to act, or if there isn't enough evidence. And fortunately, we were met by this incredible constable who ended up becoming a part of the Major Crimes Unit investigation. But they saw what we saw, that there were gaps. There was enough evidence. And we launched what was the first police investigated MAID death in Canadian history. So you think that this is a win. Mm-hmm. We're like, amazing. The police think that this is, that this is, for the first time, we weren't feeling gaslit,
Right.
You felt seen.
We felt seen in this. And
can I ask specifically what impression they got of what you were showing them? Like, you obviously had some instincts. You went and were able to convey what it was to them. Can you put language to what those infractions might have been or are?
Yeah, of course. So kind of back to what we were talking about with track 1. So track 1 is that your death is reasonably foreseeable. And track 2 is if your death is not reasonably foreseeable. There's different safeguards. So for now in Canada, it actually changed a few months before my mom died, but they removed. So there used to be a 10-day assessment period. A lot of people call it a waiting period. It is not a waiting period. This is the amount of time that an assessor needs. And it's supposed to be for them to do their due diligence to ensure that the patient has met the qualifications or the requirements. And they've now eliminated that. So now you can die the next day. That's kind of what we were talking about, if your death is reasonably foreseeable. And I get it. If a person is actually laying in hospice or in palliative care, there's no relief for their suffering. They're gasping for air. You can see,
what are we waiting for?
Yeah, you can see these scenarios why that would be a great law to implement or to remove that safeguard. For track 2, there's a 90-day assessment period because the person isn't dying imminently. It's more time for the doctor or the assessors to reach out. So say, here's an example. A person has chronic fatigue and they have not been able to relieve their fatigue in any means that is reasonable to the patient. So that's in the legislation. And so
still vague language, but
very vague. And perhaps the doctor says, we have magic blue pill that is going to cure your chronic fatigue. And the patient can just say, thank you for letting me know that option. That's not reasonable for me. So you can refuse to have treatment. But say this doctor or this assessor has no experience in chronic fatigue. They're required to reach out to someone who has expertise in chronic fatigue. However, if a doctor says, well, I've treated many patients with chronic fatigue, therefore I have expertise, you don't have to be an expert. You don't have to be a specialist. You just have to claim expertise in this subject. So you can see where this is
so there's no real metric.
No, absolutely. Yeah, there's no metrics. Okay. And so, but of course, these are all things that we have learned in the 4 years of this advocacy work, right? We just go like, my mom hasn't seen a specialist. My mom was claiming she had something called central sensitivity syndrome, which is actually called central sensitization syndrome, which is interesting because the central sensitivity, so like that mistake was actually on her vital statistics death certificate. So the doctors were just parroting what she had said. So
she'd never been diagnosed.
No.
So this is a circus.
This is a circus. It's an absolute zoo. And so we present this to the police. Like, my mom was not imminently dying. Therefore, she should be approved under track 2. And if she was approved under track 2, there was no 90 days. Like, from the first text to her first scheduled death was 10 days. So we can't see under either track.
Right. Because if she was what's the proper term? Well-minded, good,
sound mind.
Sound mind. Then she would have had to have an imminent disease, which she did not. Imminent dying disease. Okay.
Yeah.
So that, why is this? Why are we debatable?
Okay. Well, let's jump to the next thread.
So
okay.
The police see all this.
Yep. So the police see all of
this.
this.
For you guys being able to convey it as well.
Thank you. Sadly, because we have more education, and I'm going to use that term loosely. I'm doing air quotes, education. Police are no longer investigating because in Canada, you have to prove a threshold of beyond a reasonable doubt for criminal negligence, which is showing a malicious intent. And because the legislation doesn't require that a doctor even, there's no burden of proof to prove any of these things.
There's no person to blame.
There's no person to blame. So police will no longer investigate MAID deaths.
So it's just not my problem anymore?
It's just not my problem. And we'll get into the runaround with that. So the police spent 8 months investigating and learning about the systems. And when my sister and I finally got called back to go to the major crimes unit, it was actually documented on the 5th Estate. So there's a documentary series by the CBC. They were filming at our house in the morning. We went to the police station. They came back and captured our devastation when they told us that they had to close the investigation. There was not enough evidence. And because my mom was frail, because she was starving herself, her death, in the opinion of this doctor, was reasonably foreseeable. And so my mom actually did meet the requirements of the law.
So they did have access to the documents in the end?
So the police never got access to the assessment records. The police were shut down by the health authority. So the Fraser Health Authority, in which my mom...
How'd you find that out?
So I'm the executor of my mom's estate. And so I gave the police permission to request the assessment records, and the Fraser Health Authority cited privacy. So in Canada, a person's right to privacy remains for 30 years after their death. And the only person who is legally entitled to these records is my mom, and she's dead. So the police requested the records. And because they did not, they said, maybe there's more information in here, but with the evidence that we have, we don't have enough to prove to Crown. And so we have to close the investigation. They did say, however, if you do find enough evidence or more evidence, we would be happy to open the case again. And so that's where my sister and I went for the next 2 years, trying to get these assessment records.
Let's take a break from the cultiverse. Here's a word from our sponsors. Thanks for listening, everyone. Now let's dive back into the cultiverse.
The fact that these assessment records exist and you can't access them, nor the police can access them, to me is the most egregious. I don't even know if it's a red flag or abuse of power or what are we protecting here?
Protecting? What's this about?
Yeah, assessment records for somebody who is passed.
The nuance of this is that I am the executor.
Yeah, you should.
And they said that these are for personal reasons. So it's not in the best interest
Personal
of my mother.
To whom?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what they're saying is that, or what I'm saying is that my mom requested to have MAID. She requested to be euthanized. In order to be eligible, you have to meet a certain criteria. And what I am saying is that I don't believe my mom met the certain criteria. If you don't meet the criteria, it is no longer MAID. It is just homicide.
Yeah, murder. Yeah.
So you can read it in the legislation. MAID is just a classification of our homicide law. It is a non-culpable homicide as long as you meet the specific requirements outlined in the legislation. So what I am saying is that I don't believe that the law was followed. We have enough evidence. I believe enough evidence to get the assessment records, but the health authority has said absolutely not. We are invoking privacy laws on this. And now my sister and I have gone to the Privacy Commission. We have spent over 2 years in multiple different applications to get the assessment records. Even when I was called to testify in Canadian Parliament under a public interest override, they still denied our family access. That is the definition of a cover-up.
Yeah.
If you refuse to release information that halts or hinders an investigation, that is a cover-up. The health authority is covering up this information.
I would call it a crime.
I also think it's a crime.
That falls under the definition of crime for me.
It's a crime. And no other family members are able to get the assessment records now. I know many family members who have not spoken to media, who have not said anything, and they've requested the records and they've given them to the family. So the health authority has the authority to release the records. They just won't give them to me because my sister and I went to the police because we tried to stop her death even before my mom died. So we are a problem to the system.
Oh my.
So other families have gotten access. I'm just going to say this so it's really clear.
Yes.
Other families, so the Privacy Act doesn't pertain to all families, just people who are shit disturbers.
The ones they want.
That's the soundbite.
There's not there's not a criteria as to which they release the materials.
It's
right?
up to the discretion of the health authority who
is that? Is that a person or is that a bureaucracy?
It's a bureaucracy, yeah. So the health authority and the Ministry of Health in Canada, they are the ones. So there's regions, I guess. And so the Ministry of Health is the umbrella. And then under the Ministry of Health, there's different regions. And so the Fraser Health Authority was the health region that my mom died within.
So how would that work? Your case is kind of like a hot case and people know to take care of it in a certain way and expedite it a certain way because
what's happening behind closed doors?
How does that? Do you know any idea how that bureaucracy works?
I mean, there's canned answers. So a lot of other advocates that I've worked alongside that are now trying to get access to the same records, we're getting the same canned answer, or between different authorities and they're getting the same canned answers with the same mistakes. Like the wrong file number repeated. So we know that they're talking within their systems. So it's wild to me because surely it is in the best interest of my mother that her death was legal, right? She wanted a legal death. And I'm saying her death was not legal. surely that's in her best interest, but apparently not. And even at the highest level of government, under our federal legislation,
Okay. No,
I was unable to get.
Once you got denied access, even with the police, and you got that all captured on the Fifth Estate, and we'll put a link to that in our show notes. People want to watch that. Yeah, what happened? So what happens from there? And by the way, I totally get it why you have to become an advocate. Like,
no, this is unacceptable.
Yeah, like,
yeah. Instead of continuing, I want to make one more distinction.
Sure, yeah.
Just from it. For you, how clandestine do you think it is? Do you think it's oh shit, we screwed up here, we don't want this out, it's a one-off, or is it a systemic thing? And because your mom was vulnerable, she was targeted in a way. Are there incentives to do it, or are they covering up trial and error mistakes and don't want to pay out, or whatever? What's motivating it, and how deep do you think this thing is? And
yeah,
does that make sense? That question makes sense?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, there was a line in your book that I have with me that is dog-eared and tortured with all of my notes, but you had this line that said it's bad for business, you know?
Yeah.
And the year that my mom died by MAID, so in 2021, the Parliamentary Budget Office, so the PBO, and you can go online, you can just search this up. This is public information. The government saved $86.9 million net, providing MAID versus palliative care alone. Okay. So
can you say that number again?
$86.9 million.
The government saved.
The government saved. And that was MAID versus palliative care alone. Right? Okay. So we're not talking about people for track 2
it's expensive to keep people alive.
It's expensive to keep people alive. And so when families like mine speak out and we're asking for tighter safeguards, and so less people will be able to access the program, it's less net savings.
So that's the big picture system that you've uncovered.
It's a metric.
It's a metric.
Let's be diplomatic. Let's just call it, that's a metric. That's an interesting metric.
It's a very interesting
Do people call you a conspiracy theorist for this metric?
Oh, I mean, that would be one of the nicer things that I've been called. I mean, it sounds like I am a conspiracy theorist when I talk about these. Even sometimes I'm listening to myself in my head as I'm saying the words. I'm like, this is wild. This sounds crazy, you know? But
it's
like
crazy, and it's also extremely lazy.
Yes.
There's like laziness at every single, and like the police are like, yeah, I see it, but, and the inconsistencies in like the tracks are like, the whole thing is just bizarre to me.
Well, so like, and get this. So my sister and I, we filed complaints with the College of Physicians. The College of Physicians, they said to us like, well, this is a criminal matter. You need to go to the police. So we go to the police, tell us that they can't get access from the health authorities. And so then we go back to the health authorities and to the MAID oversight unit. You guys, there's something called a MAID oversight unit. So really, this is an organization.
Bureaucracy. They create another office. They have to pay.
That's right. But this is a review that is done post-mortem. So within 72 hours, they need to confirm that the paperwork is in place. And there have been hundreds, and I talk about this in my book, there were more mistakes in the recording in British Columbia than there were deaths the year that my mom died, and it continues to expand. So these doctors are making mistakes. Sometimes they're a small clinical error, but there's been other cases where there was only one assessment done. They didn't even bother getting a second assessment, or these doctors have required more training because they've realized that this person doesn't really know what they're doing. But again, it's like not even a slap on the wrist. It's just like, oh, you probably need a little bit more training because you accidentally killed someone and it didn't follow the law.
And they're kind of doing it as we go along.
That's right.
Can any doctor become an assessor?
So any doctor can become an assessor. You're not required to as a doctor, but you can, and any nurse practitioner. So not a nurse, but a nurse practitioner.
What's the difference?
Oh gosh, I don't know like all of the nuances, but I mean, considerably more schooling. I would say it's
I would say the assessor thing is the thing that needs to be most stringent, most rigorous, and most transparent.
How do you become what do you need to do? Like, do you have to go through?
And it seems to me it's the most nebulous and most covered up, right?
Yeah, where are the gaps?
Going back to what I said before, these laws there should be laws in place that assume that not all doctors are going to be practicing with morals and ethics, right? These safeguards aren't to safeguard good doctors. And so there's also no psychiatric assessment required for the assessors. So no doctor ever has to go through a psychiatric assessment. We just assume that all of these doctors are not unhinged and working, under...
I certainly wouldn't assume that anywhere these days.
Anyone can be unhinged or become a sociopath.
I read an article.
Or you can have a brain injury and then the brain, isn't working properly, or they have an eating disorder. I mean, doctors are humans, right? And we make mistakes. So why shouldn't we require stringent laws around this to make sure?
The most stringent.
The most stringent, because we were talking about life and death.
You also want that kind of person who's willing to put themselves through that kind of rigmarole and take the job seriously. You have to have high standards. You have to give it that pedigree so they don't... That's the guardian of the gate, if you ask me, from what I'm hearing.
I agree.
In the food chain, the assessors are the ones that can go, no, this is ridiculous, or, right? Are you hearing that? That's what I'm hearing.
Yeah, no, I'm putting together a lot of pieces, and I meant to say this at the beginning, just from like my own tiny little lens that I think I mentioned when we talked on the phone, that I had a very close loved one, just to keep them anonymous for their privacy and family privacy, who had a very quick cancer diagnosis, was in a ton of pain. She was rapidly declining, couldn't live like this, decided to have MAID. We all were supportive of, sad, obviously, but supportive, because there was she was given 2 weeks, and she was like very in so much pain, and we were all for it, in theory, sad, but supportive. And then she actually passed naturally the night before MAID was scheduled. So I have this little window of this is where it works to be quick for somebody like her, right?
That's a good point. Yeah.
How do we allow for that and allow for somebody like your mother who needed a different type of care and fell through the cracks? How do we navigate that? And
which is cheaper?
Well, there's the micro and then the macro, right? The micro of how to protect people like your mother and my family member for her wishes. And then also, I'm scrambling to try to find the words.
I think what you're weighing is okay, there's time, energy, and effort that's going to need to go into assessing your mom. There's not time, energy, and effort to assessing someone who's going to be dead in a day in the same
and then also
gravity, right? And there may be an incentive to, I don't know, this is where it gets conjecture, but it feels like there might be an incentive if it's money-based or whatever and it's bureaucratic, that it might be a little easier to say someone has to go in 24 to 48 hours. And to your point, how do you know who's making these decisions? Who's assessing? I don't know their value system. I don't know their history. So it seems like there aren't very stringent laws in place to assess the assessor. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And there's peer-reviewed articles that are out now on healthcare serial killers. And I know that sounds very extreme, but there are doctors that are practicing under their medical badge that have similar characteristics to serial killers. But because they are able to practice under this law,
it's nuts.
It is actually nuts, and it was really interesting. So earlier this year, Canada, for the second time, convened a special joint committee. And what they were looking at was whether or not Canada should expand, as planned, to include mental illness as a sole condition to access medical assistance in dying. So in 2021, when the law was expanded for people whose death was not reasonably foreseeable, they enacted a sunset clause. And this clause was that in 2 years' time, which will give our authorities enough time to research and figure out how they're going to roll this out, that people with mental illness as a sole criterion will be able to access MAID. It now twice has been pushed back. And so as it stands, on March 17th, 2027 in Canada, people with a mental illness as a sole condition will be able to access medical assistance in dying.
These are competence problems. I'm hearing. All I'm hearing is where's the competence?
But also, any mental illness?
So this is, and again, okay, we should get into narrative control because this is one that is wild to me.
Sinking down to the depths of the ocean, hanging on to the weight of my love. If I let go of it all, I could leave, but I know I won't.
We hope you're enjoying A Little Bit Culty. If so, please do show us some love. Drop a rating or leave a review. Hit subscribe on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you listen. And subscribe to our Patreon at patreon.com/alittlebitculty.
Even better, send this episode to someone who needs it. Maybe they're in a cult. Maybe they're just a little bit susceptible. Or maybe they just love a good story. Spread the word, spread the love. Thanks for listening, and see you next time.
A Little Bit Culty is a Trace 120 production.
Executive produced by Sarah Edmondson and Anthony Nippy Ames in collaboration with producer Will Rutherford at Citizens of Sound. Our co-creator is Jess Temple Tardy.
Our production coordinator is Leslie Dinsmore.
Writing by Sandra Namoto and social media marketing by Eric Swarzinski and Brooke Keene.
Our theme song, Cultivated, is by the artists John Bryant and Nigel Aslan.
This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Do you ever think about switching insurance companies to see if you could save some cash? Progressive makes it easy to see if you could save when you bundle your home and auto policies. Try it at progressive.com.
Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Potential savings will vary. Not available in all states.